Garibi hatao, ye karo. Look at what they did. They had a scheme for housing called the Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission, JRUF. They sanctioned 13 lakh homes, built only 8.
Wait, 8?
Only 8 lakhs. But an average Indian politician believes if you want to rule over people, keep them reasonably uneducated and reasonably poor. That means your writ will run larger there.
Following the tragic assassination of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi on 31st October 1984, the INC ran a diabolical campaign. The party openly fanned communal hatred against the minority Sikh community. What were you doing at this point when there was a direct attack against the Sikh community that you belong to?
When the riots took place, this was 1984, my parents were in Delhi. I had some very close friends, lifted my mother and father from there, and he brought them to my grandparents' place. This was the level of fear.
What is one common advice that older people give to younger people that is complete BS?
Younger people don't need advice. Giving advice is in and of itself BS.
मुंबई, ये मत पूछो कब, क्यों और कैसे. बस ये जान लो कि मैं आ गया हूँ और मेरे साथ मेरा पॉडकास्ट दोस्तकास्ट भी आया है. But there is an issue. I have no studio. इसलिए या तो मैं लोगों के घर पे रिकॉर्ड कर रहा हूँ या किसी रेंटल स्टूडियो. I have a new apartment in Mumbai, but I'm still on the move. I need a mic that can handle my crazy, chaotic life. So I reached out to a company that's been in business for 99 years. मैंने कहा आपके पास माइक है? बोले श्योर. मैंने कहा श्योर? कहते कंपनी का नाम श्योर है, माइक का नाम है मूव माइक 2. मैंने ना बहुत सारे लैब माइक्स यूज करे हैं and this one takes the crown. ये इतना छोटा है ना, it's practically invisible. That's what she said. Both the mics have their own Bluetooth. केस से निकाला, फोन पे श्योर मोटिव ऑडियो ऐप से कनेक्ट करा और रिकॉर्ड दबाया. दैट्स सिंपल. बट आई थिंक द ऐप इज द गेम चेंजर. ब्लूटूथ से पेयर करते ही यू कैन कंट्रोल द गेन, मॉनिटर द आउटपुट एंड सबसे बाप फीचर है प्रीसेट. पॉडकास्ट के लिए स्पीच मोड, गाना गाने के लिए सिंगिंग मोड और टाइम पास करने के लिए फ्लैट मोड. और अगर आपको आपका ऑडियो डायरेक्टली कैमरा में चाहिए, जस्ट यूज द रिसीवर. बाय द वे, मैं ये सब कुछ पूल के अंदर रिकॉर्ड कर रहा हूँ. पीछे पूरा मुंबई का शोर है, बट यू डोंट हियर एनीथिंग. इट्स रियली दैट गुड. So अगर आप एक podcaster हो, vlogger हो, or you're trying to look at content for the 87th time, get the Shure Move Mic 2. It is here to disrupt the industry. Mark my words. Description में link है. जाके check out करो और अपना audio game थोड़ा सा elevate करो. And I will see you in the city of dreams. Lowly independent broadcaster like myself in non-formal attire to come to your office and interview you and give me all the time in the world. Thank you so much for that, first of all.
I wouldn't describe you, and you should not describe yourself as a lowly, independent broadcaster in non-formal attire. You see, the profession that you have chosen to enter, I don't think the attire is even a reference point. By the way, considering what you're wearing, it could be fairly formal attire in Hong Kong or in Japan. So, number one. Number two, I think in that wide universe out there, which deals with content and which deals with the substance of how people, especially those who are in part influenced by, and on the other hand are also able to in turn influence others. I think that universe is just evolving. So who's lowly paid or fashions himself or herself with the degree of, I like humility, but I just thought that's a good note on which we start.
Fantastic. Thank you for a retort that I have no further retort to. I want to jump straight into your book, Delusional Politics. And I have a statement from that book. For societies to accept post-truth politics as the norm, which has not yet happened in totality, but is on the horizon in the US, UK, and India, there must be a fundamental shift in the basis for political beliefs from fact-based credibility to belief-based credibility. In other words, in the post-truth era, people's realities are molded not by evidence, but by whichever narratives complement their pre-existing biases. Now, we're in the era of Godi media or Chatukar media or paid media or massive trolls on both sides of the spectrum, where I was speaking with a friend who's on the left, and I said, you know, when people do interviews, and I was mentioning something about facts, he said facts are subjective. And I said, how can facts be subjective? And so there are many shows in the world right now which label themselves as the purveyors of facts, the purveyors of truth. But your statement is in direct contradiction to this.
I'm wondering why you say this.
No, I'm somebody who could claim at least to have a postgraduate degree in what constitutes a fact. At least a postgraduate degree, if not a MPhil or a PhD degree. That statement you quoted is a statement in a particular context. If you read the statement carefully, I am not saying it. There was a point of view at that point of time. And what is that point of time? I want to do the context setting. It is when Mr. Donald Trump, who made his name in the world of real estate, when I was ambassador to the UN in New York and permanent representative, I used to stay in the Trump Tower. Okay, and that is one of the many Trump Towers. Mr. Trump had many accomplishments as a businessman, and then he decided to enter the fray of politics. And that context in which he entered politics is very significant to understand. I'll tell you a small story. I was traveling with Lakshmi, whom you have interviewed separately. I was retired, we were going for a dinner and we had hailed an Uber. We were going from our residence because a visitor had come and we were going. And so the person driving the Uber appeared to be Hispanic, at least from the way they talked, the name, every cab or has the name of the driver. So Lakshmi asked him, so, sir, you must be voting for Hillary Clinton because this is New York is democratic country. So he said, no, not at all. I'm voting for Donald Trump because this election is about jobs. What was the context on the jobs? That the Rust Belt, what you refer to as the Rust Belt, you've studied there, you know.
The American South?
Yeah, the Rust Belt, and particularly after the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, and the Uruguay round of multilateral trade negotiations and all that, after the trade liberalization, there was a perception that jobs in the manufacturing sector had gone. And they had gone either to China or they had gone as part of the NAFTA.
Yeah, we saw what happened with Detroit.
Exactly. So there was a deep sense of resentment and said no. So if you analyze that, how did that narrative come about? So coming back to what is a fact. If you are sophisticated in that understanding in terms of spent time, I start where I got my first lesson. As an undergraduate student in Delhi University, I read a little book by a person called E.H. Carr. Its name was What is History? And one of the things it says, what is a fact? Okay? Now we can come into what is an empirically verifiable fact, but even if you can determine what is an empirically verifiable fact, you still need to provide context and setting. Like I started with that statement you quoted, as a statement had a particular context.
Right.
So Caesar crossed the Rubicon. Clear enough? It's a fact. You can determine the year when Caesar crossed the Rubicon. But that fact in and of itself will not tell you anything. It will not tell you, for instance, how many people crossed the Rubicon before Caesar did and how many crossed the Rubicon after that. If there are 10 million people crossing the Rubicon, hypothetically in a given period of time, and Caesar is somewhere in between, it means nothing. If on the other hand you tell me that the Rubicon is an insurmountable river to cross and Caesar made a heroic crossing like climbing the Everest, then the fact of his crossing assumes a dimension of its own.
Right.
You start from there. Then you go into 18th century German philosopher coming earlier. By the way, E.H. Carr worked for the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. I think he's working on Russia. I think it was a radio signals or somebody, but he wrote a brilliant piece. Now there's Ranke. It says facts speak for themselves. Of course they speak for themselves, but you've got to give something. But that was an objective analysis as part of the empiricist tradition. But now you went from there to narratives. You can create any narrative. So then my worry became, and when I was writing that book, is that if you utter a lie, okay, and whilst truth is busy tying its shoelaces, that lie has traveled halfway around the world. That is what you're seeing today. That if you and I are politically against each other, by against each other means if we, let's say, our narratives are clashing. First of all, why do I need to build a narrative? I'll come to that in part of my work. I think I need to build a narrative because I want to see the impact of the development work I'm doing, and I'll come to that in a minute if you allow me, to reach people, because I'm part of a system which tries to prove that good governance or good economics is good politics. Now you have got something completely opposed to that. I have a lot of friends in the left, I'll tell you, a lot of friends on the left, I'm putting it mildly, because in my own time, I took the teachings of people like Karl Marx seriously. And my desire to study Marx was partly political philosophy, but more because I thought historical materialism, which is his analysis of history, has a lot to say for it. For instance, quoting one of these famous statements, I quoted this to a very senior CPIM leader who knew me when we used to play cricket on the lawns of India Gate, 60 years ago? I'm 72, and we must have been playing cricket at maybe 55 years ago, but not more than that, because I entered university at the age of 16, so before we entered university. And said that, and this is Marx talking about Hegel. He said, Hegel once famously wrote, history repeats itself or has a tendency to repeat itself. This is the 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon, Marx writing. He said he should have added, first time as tragedy, second time as farce. What we are going through today is a transitioning from that tragedy to the farce. Because a country like India, which has been fed a lot of Fabian socialist stuff, serious socialist stuff, lightweight socialism, strong socialism. I mean, I used to famously have to hear in my earlier career, he said, the communist parties in many countries of the world, certainly the communist parties in Europe had collapsed. Communist parties in America didn't actually take off. But even in the Soviet Union, you saw the total collapse of the Communist Party. I mean, I can give you historical. In China, what you see is not communism. In many ways, it's state, collective, socialism in a sense. But the only place where the communist parties were thriving in that period when I was having it was India. You had a Congress government in power in the center, led by Dr. Manmohan Singh, in which the communist parties had you by your, I have to choose my words carefully.
You can use the Spanish word for it.
Yeah, they couldn't move without those guys. Now, I can understand if you are dependent on electoral support on those guys. I can understand that. If you are into democratic politics, then, as Marx said, the electoral process gives the opportunity to the proletariat once in 5 years to determine which members of the ruling class or the bourgeoisie will misrepresent them in parliament. That is broadly their cynicism. But the point is, you had an India which in 1947 gained independence from the colonial dispensation after a period of 190 years. And during that 190 years, you saw your contribution to the global GDP decline from 27% contribution to the global GDP. Not me, this is Angus Maddison, a Cambridge historian. And it came down to 2% or so in 1947? Now, between 1947 and 2024, you had a bulk of about 70 years or so, near about, of Congress rule. Garibi hatao, ye karo. Look at what they did. It's one of the biggest political scams which has been pulled anywhere in the world.
I think you mean till 2014. And then
no, that's what I mean. I said no, if you take the period from 1947 to 2024, bulk of the period was Congress Party.
Yeah.
Of course, till 2014. After that, we are there. Now you look at what happened before 2014 and look at what has happened after 2014. If you want to actually alleviate the and ameliorate the lives of people. What do you require? You require water, you require electricity, and you require a cooking medium. These are my three fundamentals in the life of an ordinary citizen. Okay? Otherwise, no, they're Bharat, India, all BS. It's all BS. If you can't give your people the basics, and my case to you, and this is where I say I should write a book on the irrelevance of political philosophy. People should judge you on what you've done. I'll tell you the situation before 2014. I did a little bit of homework before you came. And I start with tap water connections. Tap water connections as in urban and rural.
Got it.
Total number of households in the country, all said and done, put together would be about 32 lakh crores. 32 crores. The total number of tap water connections in 2014, accounting for the work done between those 10 years, was 3.23 crores. In other words, my friend, if these figures are correct, and I'm throwing them open for challenge, it means out of 32 crore households, bulk didn't have tap water connections. That figure, now we are talking about families, so the family can be many, there can be 3 to 4. This has gone up from 3.23 to 13.69 crores. Which means if one building has a tap water connection and there can be four, and it roughly comes out. So I can make the case to you that today every person in India, by and large, making allowance for Rasal, somebody who's maybe living in a tribal area somewhere else, but everyone has a tap water connection, point one. I'm coming now to cooking gas.
That falls under your ministry?
That falls into my ministry. In the year 2014, the total number of gas connections in the country, total number, was 14 crores. And those 14 crores were primarily in the urban sector. Today, the number of connections is 32 crores, which is nationwide. We have gone from something like 45 to 50% saturation to 100% saturation. Earlier, when I was a student in the university, you could not get a gas connection. You needed to be very lucky to get a gas connection. So even as late as 1968, we just got, when I first year in college, we just about managed to get a gas connection. And then if your cylinder ran out, it took 16 days for it to come. You were born in better times, so all I can say is, but today we are in a situation where if you ring up, maximum it takes for the cylinder to get to you 3 to 4 hours. Okay. Ujjwala, which we introduced in 2016, which was a response to a need largely felt by the economically weaker sections of our society. 10 crore, 28 lakh Ujjwala connections given, which means a free cooktop, 1 free cylinder. During the pandemic, they got 3 free cylinders. And where have these 10 crore connections gone? I think 80% have gone to rural areas. So there existed prior to 2014 a massive urban-rural divide. Massive. Drinking water connections, tap water connections, electricity, which has now gone to every nook and corner of the country. And more than that, it is cooking gas available everywhere. But more than that, you've gone from cylinder gas to piped gas. We had 14,000 kilometers of pipe. We have taken it up to 22,300. We are going to take it up to 33,000 in the next 1 or 2 years. And piped gas is typically cheaper by 20 to 25% to cylinder gas. That is the difference. Now, if you tell me somebody like me gets up now and says, कि भाई, this is not right wing or left wing. This is basic development. I could have a seminar with most of your or my friends and say, how do you characterize Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister? It's so easy to say he's right wing. Well, he's saying right wing because one part of that right wing is that he's trying to reclaim civilizational and cultural heritage, because he's come to the conclusion, by the way, I share that after my posting in Japan, that if you believe in yourself and you believe in your history and culture, you end up doing better.
Could you talk more about that? This
I'll
idea?
come in a minute.
All right.
But otherwise, all his schemes, whether it's Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Ujjwala, Swanidhi, they're all very socialistic. So he has never held back a scheme because this is right wing, because those are preconceived stereotype which people have, and then they have to face a phenomena like Narendra Bhai, Damodar Das Modi, and then they are goofed. And then what you do is you don't have an explanation, so you come back to the game in which all scoundrels feel comfortable and start giving gali. That is a game. So sorry, you wanted me to say something about.
No, I basically wanted to ask you. You've been to Japan. Clearly, I'm wearing Japanese attire right now. Japan seems to me, as a layman, a very self-contained, very happy country, right? So when you say right wing in India, you mean conserving Indian civilizational values. What do you see as a parallel?
That's by and large the context in which political sloganeering takes place. I'll tell you something about Japan. I went to Japan as a language student. Lakshmi and I went there. We both got, we were appointed to the Foreign Service.
This is your post after being posted as an IFS officer?
No, after joining the Foreign Service.
Okay.
We were still what you call language trainees. Technically, you're still probationers. You've not been confirmed in the service. So you had to learn language, and Japanese, like Arabic, was a 240-hour language. That means you have to spend 2 years learning. It's one of the more difficult languages, like Chinese, Japanese, Arabic. Other European languages, Spanish, German, they are 120 hours. In other words, you should be able to learn the language in 1 year of full training. Here, 2 years. One thing that struck me about Japan is their sense of confidence in their own ability. I'll give you a small example. I may be linguistically wrong, but it comes from experience. The word for earthquake is jishin. And the word for confidence is also jishin, except you write it with different pictographs. That sums up, I'm out of touch with the language, but give you a small impression which formed in my mind. There, they organize themselves to react to the earthquake by their building technology, incorporating in it sufficient flexibility to take quakes up to 7 on the Richter scale. When after over 7, it becomes very serious. But really strong quakes are 5.6 and 6 and so on. By building and utilizing those building materials, by organizing themselves into groups. And there the horrors of the Nagasaki and Hiroshima nuclear attacks were still fresh.
When you went there?
Yeah, obviously. I went there in 1975, beginning, and these things took place not that many years earlier. It's a country which believed in hard work, scaling up, and excellence, and for the rest of the world. The liberal, outward-oriented things which the left sometimes claims, you cannot rise as a country till you get your act together. That's a simple point I'm making. I may be very liberal in my views, I may be even left-wing, but I've got to get my act together. I mean, this is the difference in the Modi period. Water tap connection, gas, electricity, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. I mean, the Congress, which, I don't know how you describe the Congress, but I worked under several Congress prime ministers. They had a scheme for housing called the Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission, JNRUM. Okay, they sanctioned between the year 2004 and 13 lakh homes, built only 8.
Wait, 8?
Only 8 lakhs. They sanctioned 13 lakhs in 10 years, built only 8. Do you know how many we have sanctioned in this thing? 4 crore. They're 13 lakhs and our 4 crores in 10 years. How many have we delivered? My urban part is 1 crore 19 lakhs or so. I think 75, 80 lakhs have already been delivered. The rest, as we speak, I don't, these days, the political preoccupation, I don't monitor it that way. But we finished the scheme. So, let me come to something which looks very socialistic. Every member who qualifies by economic criteria, that is the very important. 3 meals of dry ration in a day. It started during the pandemic, is continuing. So if you are a left-wing critic, you say, oh, you have put so many people into poverty. No, you have not put people into poverty. What is the significance and basis for your arakshan or reservation? That over 200 years you have been subjected to some this thing. So we are giving you a reservation till every member comes. We are not, many members there today could turn around and say, bhai, we have overcome the pandemic effect, we may not need it. But he is still giving it to all 80 crore people. It looks like a very socialist measure, but here is a so-called right-wing prime minister who's doing it. So I come back, 4 crore homes built, 14 crore toilet builds, electricity to every individual, water tap connection to every individual, gas connection to every individual. That today is what the Prime Minister is known for now. That's part of his this thing. And I believe, I'm convinced that he has proved that good governance and good economics is good politics. And therefore, what you're seeing here, it's not that they don't understand. It's not difficult to understand what I'm saying. But you've somehow lost the narrative because you were trying to say something, garibi hata rahe, garibi hata rahe. Arey wo do pocket boroughs hain, wahan to garibi should have, with the kind of political access and clout Amethi and Raebareli had, they should have been well-to-do thing. But an average Indian politician believes if you want to rule over people, keep them reasonably uneducated and reasonably poor. That means your writ will run larger. I'm being very cynical. You'll wonder what. My first thing, if anybody is working with me, is say, yeah, get yourself educated, increase your skill. Because I believe you do better, I do better.
Right, of course. Did this cynicism come from leading a life of diplomacy and then being almost ushered into the world of politics where you had to deal with people who were, like career politicians?
No, first of all, nobody's ushered into. I have a basic philosophy of life that anything that you do, unless you have your own willingness or acquiescence. I retired in 2013. I had made up my mind in 2013, I don't want to do something for a while. I'll be very frank with you. Even now, I've now been a minister for 7 years. I'll say whenever this innings comes to an end, for a while, I just want to be by myself. So in 2013, I wanted to be by myself. But it couldn't last. In 6 months' time, I was international think tanking. In 2014, I joined the BJP formally. I had started working. I was campaigning in 2014 already. I was called by my boss in sometime in 2016. He said, when will you have time? I said, March 2017. And then I came here. I became chairman RIS and the rest is history. Then I became a minister, I got elected and so on. No, I don't think anybody is ever ushered into it. You must have at least a willingness to enter that change, that form of change or that era of change.
What does it take? Like what do you have to sacrifice from your former life to enter public office?
No, it's not that. Every stage in your life has pluses and minuses. Well, I don't think the hard work is a distinguishing feature. I was working reasonably long hours even as a diplomat. The difference, I think, if I have to bring down to that, there's far more satisfaction being in political life because you can actually be part of a process. Like something good gets done and you were part of it. You were a small part of it, but you were part of it.
As opposed to negotiating with the diplomats?
So there's a lot of satisfaction. Diplomacy is still a little more acknowledged, but civil service is by and large anonymous. Diplomacy, if you're representing flying in India's flag and you make a statement in the Security Council or in the General Assembly, it'll be reported back. But you are dealing with more hardcore things. I think building toilets, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, being part of the team that constructed Kartavya Path, the new parliament, Bharat Mandapam. It's a different field there. Being able to negotiate energy security. All hell is breaking out all over the world, and you're able to make sure that there is no shortfall in availability, that you are able to ensure affordability of energy and ensure sustainability, green transition. So the satisfaction degree is higher, I think. I don't know. I can't speak on everyone's behalf. I was particularly fortunate that as a civil servant, I always got assignments which were really meaty. Sri Lanka, waging peace, ethnic crisis, dealing with the LTT, being in London immediately after the nuclear tests, when we were, there were some parts of the world wanted to make us look like pariahs. Being ambassador to the UN in Geneva, then ambassador to the UN in New York, or being in Brazil when the transformation relationship took place. So I was very fortunate, and I've also been very fortunate in the political phase, because I've been doing housing and urban affairs for 7 years now. I was Civil Aviation Minister at a very important time when the pandemic was on. We were conducting Vande Bharat flights. We brought back how many million people? I don't remember offhand. We were able to sell Air India, privatize Air India. Then petroleum and natural gas, and then commerce and industry in between. So I've been fortunate in both the phases, but you can never compare. These are very two different professional phases.
Mr. Puri, I have so many tangents to take from here, so I'm going to attempt this one. In a 2014 interview to Business Standard, you said you admired the BJP's approach to national security. Obviously, you served as a diplomat abroad, so you have seen how the world perceives India, how diplomats, how bilateral teams, how presidents, prime ministers perceive India. It seems to me, as a layman with little knowledge of foreign policy and national security, that India seems to be on a rise when it comes to being perceived as a strong, not only a strong neighbor in the subcontinent, but also a power to be contended with. So, what led you to join the BJP, particularly on this topic, national security? And how do you think this has changed, not only from the standpoint of a diplomat, but also as an avid reader of history and as an avid geopolitics, perhaps, enthusiast?
First of all, I spent 39 years in the Foreign Service, from 1974 July to 2013 March or so, end March. So it's nearly 39 years, just 3 months short. Obviously, my world in those 39 years was to a very large extent conditioned by the world of foreign and security policy, also trade policy, development policy. The 6 months that I spent after a gap of 6 months, I also joined the international think tanking business. I should just tell you, lads, I was always very skeptical about this think tank world. I thought there's a lot of guys who sit there and drink endless cups of coffee, do a lot of seminaring and say brilliant things. But what does it add up to? So I was told that it's actually not think tank, it's do tank. So think tanking includes do tanking. So we started working. So I was fortunate that the UN had decided, or rather the UN in conjunction with civil society, especially the International Peace Institute, had decided to establish what is called the Independent Commission on Multilateralism, ICM, to see whether the UN was fit for purpose on its 70th anniversary. And they decided to appoint Kevin Rudd, who's I think the 27th Prime Minister of Australia, I don't know, but right, I missed 25th, 27th point. He has as the chair of the Independent Commission on Multilateralism, and they decided to appoint me as a Secretary General. So I had access to a lot of former heads of state and government, worked with them to, we set up 16 thematic groups, and we did call the best experts in the field, women, peace and security, cyber security, X, Y, Z. So I found that was a transition from hardcore diplomacy into this think tanking world. And when my boss asked me, when will you have time? I said, we are submitting the report in September 2016. Therefore, I should be free by March 2017. And I discovered two things. That if you're not in the think tanking world, if you're outside it, then you tend to underestimate the value of that. Because I think the value of a good report, if it is written and can get absorbed, is very high.
For policymakers?
Oh, absolutely. Because policymakers and democracies are guys like you and me who come in from the hurly-burly of politics. Suddenly they have to deal with... So the first thing you have to, when you're confronted with a situation, by what can you rely on? Where is the work being done? Most of the time you will go ahead with a scheme, but you have one bright guy in the sense, hey, wait a minute, don't do this because this has been tried elsewhere and they didn't do well. So I developed a healthy respect for that thing, for what I call the world of the realm of ideas, where people actually sit. And so I have a lot of respect for civil society and those people who live in that think tank world and operate like that. But then another thing you learn, it requires leadership of a particular caliber and decisiveness to take those ideas and implement them. Because if the two are coexisting, and that's where Modi comes in. I mean, I think one of the best examples I have from my personal experience, the UN decided, after the experience of the Millennium Development Goals, decided to expand and work out another set of sustainable development goals, or what is called the Agenda 2030. And these Agenda 2030 has to be completed by 2030. But as I have said often enough, MDG succeeded because a large developing country, developing I don't know, China, which is a $19 trillion economy, succeeded in moving millions of people out of poverty. And I said the SDGs will succeed because India will do that. By the way, in the last 10 years, the Modi government has succeeded in moving 250 million people out of multidimensional poverty. It was 25 crores out of that 130, 140. Now, when you are into that, I was asked, is India implementing the SDGs? And you know what my answer is? Modi came to power in office in 2014 May. All his central schemes were implemented in June 2015, and most of the Agenda 2030 is there. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, the fact that the title...
But I specifically asked about national security. What led you to...
I'm coming because it's not just national security. 2030 agenda, women's empowerment, abject poverty. So I'm saying all that. But at the end of the day, you can't do it if the country is not strong. And national security is it's a combination. National security is not how strong your armed forces are. Let me put it to you differently. I saw an interview by Lakshmi yesterday, where she said that you can take the right decisions, but they have to be predicated on the strength and resilience of your economy. So, foreign and security policy are not made in a vacuum. You need for the economy to grow, and you must give your adversaries a message, both on the economic and the security front, don't mess with us. Because what will happen is, the minute you are rising, all right, you are affecting other people's interests. And that's when you get this kind of, pious homilies which are thrown your way, where people outside will turn out, oh, you should not be doing this. All right? Wait a minute, let's get down to that. So as you grow stronger, I found the BJP a very, very attractive proposition in 2014, because I had witnessed a long period of a somewhat namby-pamby foreign and security policy. I don't want to go into a critical phase, but I give you a small example. I say, how can you negotiate with someone who uses terror as an instrument of state policy? I'm talking about a Western neighbor. So, हम पाकिस्तान के साथ बात कर रहे हैं. अब क्या बात कर रहे हो? He says, I want Kashmir to be severed from this thing. We kept saying it's an integral part of it. Then what are you discussing with them? So along came Modi, tried, in the beginning he also tried this continuation of policy. And the problem, I think, and you are very young, most of the time our assessment making capacity is jeopardized because we are in a process of continuity and change.
Policy is a continuum?
It's a continuum. So you're going along with it, so you don't see the change. This is what happened. So now, when I came in, I'm sorry I gave you a very long-winded explanation.
That's okay.
Because I wanted to explain to you why BJP appealed to me at that point of time. I would never have, I saw as a senior civil servant, as a grade 1 ambassador or secretary to the government in Delhi, I saw what it was. I saw the nature of decision making. That's not how India would have gone forward. Today, what's the situation? Pakistan is no longer a relevant factor in our talk. Otherwise, Pakistan ne ye kar diya, Pakistan ne cross-border terrorism ho gayi. You abrogated Article 370. What happened after that? Today, Kashmir is booming. Kashmir is booming. The young stone-throwing industry is virtually at a collapse. Again, I come back to the same point. Foreign and security policy are more than the impact of deterrence. They are more than the strength of your armed forces. They encompass your economic resilience, how you are going. So you've gone from the fragile 5 to the 5th largest economy. The IMF says you are at a $3.95 trillion. Japan, which is the 4th largest, is at 4.1. You're growing at 7 to 8%. Japan is flat. It's a matter of months and the exchange rate, and you'll be the 4th largest economy in the world. So something has made the difference. Making sure that every Indian has a water tap connection, every Indian has electricity, every Indian has a gas cylinder or piped gas, and economic growth. That is where the debate is no longer left versus right. It is a particular brand of development, an alternative. And I'll sum this up. There's a gentleman who is going to go back to state hospitality in a few days' time. He was in for 50 days, came out for 20. He says, "Main mufat bijli de dunga, mufat ye de dunga, mufat wo de dunga."
You can name his name, it's okay.
No, I know what I'll name him. And Modi says कि आप हमसे सब्सिडी ले लो, अपने आवास के ऊपर सोलर पैनल लगा लो, और उस सोलर पैनल से जो बिजली बनाओगे 300 यूनिट वो रख लेना मुफ्त, अपने घर का बिजली का खर्चा, जो एक्स्ट्रा बिजली होगी उससे ईवी स्टेशन लगा लेना, और उससे ज़्यादा होगी तो नेशनल ग्रिड में बना देंगे. सब सब्सिडी हम देंगे. So which is the more economically viable win-win model? His free bijli or our produce more bijli and take advantage of that participation in that process? You don't need even to think about which is a better alternative.
Right. There is no denying that for sure, because they haven't had the kind of scale you've had. You've been in power for about 10 years as a political party. I wanted to talk about a history before we dive into current circumstances. This is from your book, actually. This is about the culture of sycophancy in the Congress. It says the inner voice of I'm going to quote Mani Shankar Iyer, who's been in the news recently because he claimed, I think yesterday, that in 1962 China invaded India.
Alleged, he said.
Allegedly. So the paraphrasing, the quote from the book is, the inner voice of people says you should become the Prime Minister. Please don't leave us. Please continue to lead us. This is in reference to Sonia Gandhi. This is not a quote.
This is what he actually said when the Congress party met and Mrs. Sonia Gandhi had decided that she did not want to be Prime Minister. By the way, full marks, she read the situation right. Because you see, if she had become Prime Minister then, the history of India would have been very different.
How so? What do you think would have happened?
You know what would have happened? They would have been out even faster. Therefore, she decided to place somebody like Dr. Manmohan Singh there, and she exercised real power through what was called a National Advisory Council.
Now, the reason I mentioned this is because then Mani Shankar Iyer went on to serve as the Union Minister for Panchayati Raj, Union Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, your predecessor, Union Minister of Youth Affairs and Sports. The same also happened for Kapil Sibal.
I should have said sycophancy pays also. No, Mani Shankar Iyer is a many splendid personality. Mani Shankar Iyer has said a lot of very, very provocative things. Mani Shankar Iyer has meanwhile written a book also on his entry into politics and etc. Look, it's a very different value system. A very different value system. I'm going to predict something. I don't know when you're going to play this podcast, but
ASAP. ASAP. It's going to go out
yeah,
as soon as
so
possible.
I'm going to predict that the Congress party, for want of, I don't want to get into precise details, but they are not going to be doing well. They will not be coming to office.
Ever?
No, in this election. I'm talking
course.
about how can I say in ever? 2021 democracy, the most fascinating part about democracy is I'm judged by what I do today and tomorrow. And I can't claim my grandfather did something and therefore, I mean, there is a yogdan there. I mean, if you go back to 1947 or what happened in that, obviously they did something. That's why they were participating in the national. I'm thinking, what are they doing today?
Right.
When that happens, it is not going to fundamentally alter the role of or the position of either Mr. Rahul Gandhi or Mrs. Priyanka Gandhi Vadra. They would still be there. Because these are the essential attributes of a Parivarvad politics. Irrespective of what happens in this election, Akhilesh Yadav will continue as the sitting leader of the Samajwadi Party. What they will do is, ye Kharge ji ne bahut kharab kaam kiya. I mean, as a president of the party, he has failed.
They're going to scapegoat him.
You are using the word scapegoat. They'll say he was the party president. Okay? The difference is that no matter what happens, if there is what is called Parivarvad and Parivarik control, then the nature of the animal is very different from what it is elsewhere. Because you don't take responsibility.
Is the BJP a meritocratic party?
It is more like a meritocratic party because it gets its body of people, Karyakarta, coming from different streams. Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, Mahila Morcha, Yuva Morcha, SC, ST Morcha, and they come in like that. That's why it is a large party and it's a growing party. If I were to answer your question of is it a meritocratic party, I would have to qualify it by saying by and large, yes. Which is not to say that we have not made mistakes. And I don't think it has been anybody's case that we have only appointed people on merit. The reasons for appointing a person is not merit, is not always the sole criteria. If you are a democracy which has the need for affirmative action, because some segments of society were not given the benefits of economic development.
Correct.
Then you'll take in somebody because of representation of neglected regions or neglected segments of society. But all said and done, they have to operate. If you make your mark in the Mahila Morcha, they will single you out. This is a long distance runner. Many of the people that you saw in the last Council of Ministers, if you do a profiling of them, you'll find out somebody was a civil servant. Now there are quite a few civil servants also. Somebody used to be Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad operator. Somebody came in from the technology world. So it's a confluence. But in either, no matter which segment you are looking at, they must have done something right, something meritorious in that to catch the attention of the process. Now I give you one of you, since you've been quoting from from delusional politics. One of the things I write that during the 16 years, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's from memory. During the 16 years that Mrs. Gandhi was president of the Indian National Congress, the BJP changed president, 4 times, 5 times?
I think it said 6 times.
6 times, see? It just came back to me. This is the difference. Today one of the, I had somebody from one of the states who's coming in and she was telling me ki, abhi to sangathan banne wala hai because the term of the, I think BJP president is coming to an end in June. I'm not prejudging whether he'll get continued but it's coming to an end. So there's a lot of expectation there'll be a new president or the same president, there'll be a change in the team. Does that ever happen in the Congress? I have been around for a long time. I mean, I was born when the first general election was taking place, 51 to 52. I have watched every general election. I mean, I may not have been old enough to understand what, but certainly from the 80s and 90s, I have been very much watching what general elections look like and what is the tenor. And the parties have changed completely, except the Parivarik parties. Except they're exactly the same. Akali Dal, Sardar Prakar Singh Badal, Sardar Sukhbir Singh Badal, Bibi Harsimrat Kaur. I don't know when their next generation is going to be ready. But I've seen Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, Sanjay Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, Priyanka Gandhi. Ask myself a question. Which of the guys that I deal with has any member of the family? In fact, I have a feeling that if you are related to somebody in the BJP, it's not an advantage, it's a disadvantage. We'll say, no, but so-and-so, so-and-somebody's daughter. Hey, wait a minute. She got noticed as a Karyakarta 5 years after the mother had passed away. You know whom I'm referring to.
Of course.
5 years after the mother's passed. Was she ever projected into that? And why has she been picked up? Because I think in the party meetings, she was working away as a Karyakarta. Somebody said, who's that?
She's been very instrumental in helping the party fight legal cases.
I'm coming precisely to that. So here, the determination. I remember the Prime Minister in a meeting was saying that I went to so-and-so, I saw this so-and-so. Minimum no to MLA ka to ticket milna chahiye usko. Because he gets impressed by work. I'm merely making that assertion. Merely making that assertion. And if your work is not measured just in terms of fighting legal cases or, doing prachar or giving 59 interviews. No. Different people make a contribution to what it is, to what is today the world's largest political party by sheer hard work. Sometimes that work goes unacknowledged. I see a problem with that. We are a large party. I'm sure our Karyakartas think that you make us work in 49 degrees, but what's in it for us? There must be that feeling. That is why when the Prime Minister picks up 3 or 4 or 5 completely unknown people who were Karyakartas made some chief ministers, the word goes around, wow. I mean, Rajasthan is a case in point. He was not even an MLA. He was first time MLA elected. He was made chief minister. Why? Because that maybe somewhat consciously also want to send the message that you don't need to have pedigree or you don't need to have this thing. You can be made chief minister. Good or bad, I don't know. Equally, you look at the other chief ministers in Madhya Pradesh.
Even Haryana for that matter.
Haryana. And you know something? I read a statement sometime, the only Yadavs contesting the election in UP from the Samajwadi Party are the Yadavs of the Yadav family. I don't know whether it's correct or not, but I saw that. Akhilesh Yadav, Dimple Yadav, the nephew or whoever. Whereas, I mean, our Yadavs are related to nobody yet. That's the difference. So, I think this is post, we started with Donald Trump and what is truth? What are facts? We are in the post era on that. You'll never be able to say that a fact in absolute terms is X. You are now having to deal with entire narratives. Because there's an entirely false narrative which is sometimes generated, which says ki ye ho gaya, wo ho gaya, democracy is under threat. Democracy is under threat. I want to take that up. Democracy cannot be under threat if a democratically elected prime minister is subject to the hurling of abuse and invectives against him all the time. I'll take you to halfway, I'll take you through a globe. Tell me, I point to countries. Which other country in the world can you use the Manishankar Iyer language on the prime minister?
America.
Huh?
America, that's it.
You can't use.
But they have so much freedom of speech.
No, they have freedom of speech, but you can't use that. I'll give you I'll throw a challenge. I've lived in America. I have a lot of friends. in America. You cannot say the kind of things you say in India in America.
Really? But they have called Donald Trump all kinds of things. Donald Trump himself has inflicted...
Wait a minute. Not when Donald Trump was in office. Wait a minute. They've called Donald Trump earlier and Donald Trump now. Try and hurl it against a sitting person. They'll, I don't know, invoke what against you? Check it out. I wouldn't think you could do it in Russia. I don't think you could do it in China. And you certainly couldn't do it in the UK. Well, I'm familiar with UK libel laws. You can do it in India because Indian democracy is still evolving. But when was democracy in danger in India? And I submit to you, in June 1975, when they imposed the emergency and curtailed civil liberties. Other than that, you've got freely flowing democracy. When you say you can do it here and there, you actually proved my point. There is democracy here and therefore you can abuse. Okay. I'm saying they've taken it to a point where in any other place which is democratic, if you do it on a sitting head of state or government, I've lived 39 years outside and I know what happens. You do it in Sri Lanka, I'll tell you what happened. In Junius Jayawardene's time, I saw what happened. Premadasa's time, I don't know now, I don't cover Sri Lanka that way. Number one. Number two, democracy in the Indian context, one is freedom of speech. It was only curtailed once, civil liberties in June 75. The second is the whole process of what I call federalism. 356, Article 356 has been used 100 times by the Congress, 50 times by one Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi. In the 10 years of the Modi government, you've not used 356 even once. And my submission to you is, any normal human being would have said the threshold has been crossed many times. But I think he's acutely conscious of the fact that he doesn't want to do it.
I just have more quotes from your book that talks about more censorship and freedom of speech. Following the tragic assassination of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi on 31st October 1984, the INC ran a diabolical campaign. The party openly fanned communal hatred against the minority Sikh community to which I belong. In leading national dailies, hate-filled propaganda was published. And we're going to put the graphic here from the book.
Can you put that graphic in the book where the border is coming right there? Put that. I've been looking for that. I was wondering where it was. I'm glad you've drawn my attention to it.
Yeah, no, because I was very surprised that, I mean, as a student of advertising, I've seen positive ads. I've seen political ads.
This is the worst of the negative ads. I agree with you. In fact, it's shameful what they did.
What were you doing at this point when there was a direct attack against the Sikh community that you belong to with newspaper diatribes? Were you safe in any way?
I was not in India. When the riots took place, this was 1984. Okay? My parents were in Delhi. I had some very close friends. Poor chap has passed away. He brought my father had a DDA flat. He lifted my mother and father from there and he brought them to my grandparents' place.
Hid them?
Hid them. They hid them because this was a flat in Khan Market. You know, the ground floor, there are shops upper. So at least if a mob tries to come up, this was the level of fear. This was the level of fear. How people felt insecure. And these are the guys who are talking to us today. Quite apart from the fact that they have not seriously apologized for the atrocities against the Sikh community. You know, I said in an interview yesterday that I don't like the word dange because danga means it's a two-way process. It's a riot. But this is not. It's a pogrom against one community. You went around, the chaps went around saying, is ghar mein Sikh rehte hain. Is marked them with this thing. And then the mob would come and bloody burn that house down or... This is what these guys have done. So, I'm turning around and saying, we have been in power in 10 years. Has one communal riot taken place where we have been in office? One, just one.
There have been lots of skirmishes.
No, skirmish will take place everywhere. I showed you, I don't know whether I didn't show you, I showed somebody else. They brought a law in the year 2011 which defined a communal riot as something that can only be carried out by the majority community.
I remember, yeah.
It is unbelievable. I tried to analyze that law. I tried to talk, how could it have been happened? Then they realized the absurdity of it and didn't pursue it. But I've got the draft legislation. If you want, I can make, if Nagendra is here, we'll make it available. You can run it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Be happy to.
Yeah, I'll make it available. Because it shocks me that they actually wanted to make sure that a minority, if there's a danga in a, which involves a minority can come into majority community, and the guys who will be booked are the...
Yeah, I think I spoke to Anand Raghunathan about it. He covered it in extensive detail.
Nagendra ko bhejna.
So while he's bringing it, should we proceed further?
Please continue.
Okay, fantastic. So obviously we have discussed several topics. I do want to discuss your portfolio now. You are among the other ministry that you have. You are the Minister for Housing and Urban Affairs. I have been a great beneficiary of urbanization. First, let me say that.
You would travel by the metro?
No. In the sense that I live in a very nice cut sector. I enjoy several amenities. I've just moved to Mumbai recently, where I enjoy...
All the rich people live there. So I applaud your success. So,
well, I maintain 2 places now, and I've certainly been a beneficiary of urban India, the urbanization that has happened. Several of my friends have come from tier 2, tier 3 cities and migrated to major Indian cities. At the same time, I think...
Just give me a second.
No problem.
You know that 2011 law where the communal danga can only be caused by the majority community. If you take that law out and just highlight the provision, because we had discussed it, and I said I have the law lying somewhere here, and we'll make it, when he plays the podcast, it'll be on the screen or whatever.
This is from the WHO, by the way. It claims that urbanization is one of the most important health challenges of the 21st century. It leads to obesity, stress, and low physical activity. How do you plan to urbanize India and promote economic activity? Because we do need to grow. We're not a developed nation yet. You know, America and all other developed nations very conveniently say that India needs to cut down its, emissions and whatnot without damaging the environment. Because it seems to me that, for example, Mumbai, let's take Mumbai. The entire city is completely in redevelopment. There is not a single patch of green grass in the western suburb area that I live, barring a small park in Almeida and Joggers Park, which basically has in the span of the park about 200 people at one point.
First and foremost, I've been ambassador and permanent representative to the WHO also when I was PR in Geneva. Always accept and accord appreciation for what they say. But the understanding of the outside world on Indian urbanization, if I may be allowed to say that, is somewhat limited. For many years, they were turning around and telling us that India is a reluctant urbanizer.
You said that in one of your articles.
No, and they turned around and said X is not happening, India doesn't want to urbanize. Partly correct, because governments before the current Prime Minister always viewed urbanization as a challenge. Our urban population in 1947 was 17%. And 17% of a total population then of 350 million gives you the figure. But what the West doesn't realize is that the scale of autonomous urbanization which has been taking place in India is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. If Bombay is under redevelopment, so is Delhi. If Delhi has a population of 2 crores, let me just recall for you, in 1947, Delhi had a population of 8 lakhs. Along came refugees like my previous generation, and it went up in the 1950 census to 22 lakhs. 14 lakhs were either domestic increase or refugees. Today, Delhi has, whenever the census takes place, hopefully soon now, we lost time because of the pandemic, it will be 2 crores plus. If you look at Jahan Jhuggi Wahi Makan, land pooling, everything, out of 2 crores, 1 crore 30 lakh people will be part of redevelopment. That is the nature of urbanization in post-colonial societies. Because that infrastructure which was built was not built by a free country. The British did not build the parliament in Delhi or Rashtrapati Bhavan for it to be the seat capital of a new independent India. They started conceptualizing that in 1916, and it started being made in 2021 1919, 16, 19, 21. These are the dates in my mind. It's only 70 years after we became an independent country that we realized we needed a parliament. Why? Because your delimitation, your census, you were going to end up with a population of some. You will need, after this limitation is over, the Lok Sabha will go up from 540 something to 800. You couldn't seat the people there. So this is the reality. Similarly,
they didn't mention that in your criticism when they criticized you for the Central Vista project.
They didn't know their left elbow from their right, you know what. They're talking nonsense. That's why I gave an interview somewhere. It was a press interview in the PIB main office. When I said, on the way there, somebody called me, I think, and said, have you seen this communication signed by 106 senior retired civil servants, which included many cabinet secretaries, foreign secretaries, and so on. So I said, I told one of my colleagues, I said, dikhao. When I read it, I had a ghati laugh. He said, it was not called Kartavya Path. We named it Kartavya Path later. Uske banne se, the green cover will reduce by 30%. This will happen. That total pack of lies. So I then turned around. I had a different word in mind, but since I was in polite society, I said, ये पढ़े लिखे विद्वान जो हैं, इनको क्या मतलब मूर्ख बताऊं, और वो भी 3 किस्म के होते हैं, साधारण ordinary, असाधारण extraordinary, and Chakravarti class. So these are Chakravarti class. All hell broke loose because I was able to make out in very simple language that these guys were not only liars, but they hadn't even read what they had signed. 2 or 3 of them called me. One guy had become cabinet secretary, a very close friend of mine. He said, I'm very sorry, तुमने मेरा नाम ले लिया. मैंने तेरा नाम तो नहीं लिया. मैंने कहा, batchmate of mine who became cabinet secretary. He said, मैं तेरा तो batchmate एक ही है जो cabinet secretary बना, मैं हूँ. तो मैंने कहा, मैंने क्या बोला, मैं तेरा नाम तो नहीं लिया ना. मैंने, how the hell did you sign that damn thing? Oh, somebody brought it, I signed it.
Damn.
So now that the green cover there has gone up by 33%. And I made fun of them. I said, green cover khatam ho jayega, then mummy, daddy, Kitu, puppy will not be able to go for ice cream. मैंने कहा, बढ़ जाएगा. And now you see Kartavya Path, footfall on any given day, I don't know what it is now because 49 degrees, but footfall on any given day is lax. Weekend is, so what are we discussing? These are guys who had no clue. We needed a larger parliament because the size of the house has to increase. Now, as it is, when it is increasing, you are hollowing it from inside. Kahin air conditioning vents nikal rahe ho, kahin taare dal rahe ho. The bloody thing is a hazard, yaar. So there is that requirement. Quite apart from the aesthetic beauty. I had my wife's nephew and a school friend of his there. They went and they were completely overawed. See the level of the change. And what was it earlier? And we were getting, oh no, the old architecture khatam ho gaya. You know, some of these guys go outside, 2 of them, Shashi Tharoor, Jairam Ramesh, I'm just naming. They go to Malaysia, oh my God, when will India have such a nice parliament house? Oh no, we did not need a parliament house. अरे तुम्हारी पार्टी की स्पीकर थी, मेरी सीनियर थी फॉरेन सर्विस में by 1 year. Her secretary wrote to the urban affairs secretary, Meera Kumar, if 5 and 6 do that. So when we do it, then they're all piling on to us. So don't take these guys seriously. They will not even get a footnote in the history of India when it is finally written.
Noted. This is from the website of Ministry of Housing Affairs. It says, at the slum decadal growth rate of 34%, the slum households are projected to go up to 18 million. 2 million non-slum urban poor households are proposed to be covered under the mission. Hence, the housing shortage envisaged to be addressed through the new mission is 20 million. We have a decadal growth rate of some slums at 34%. Why do you think this is happening? Why?
It was very simple because there is autonomous urbanization taking place. What happens is you have
हम curb नहीं कर सकते as the government. Can you not curb this?
No. You can't curb anything. Then you are doing the emergency 1975. You took people out of the slums and say we don't like you living in slum. I don't like to use the word. We're going to lift you from here and settle you in Shahjahanabad, imaginary place 200 kilometers from here. You can't do that. That's why the emergency had to be imposed because people rose up. So bloody curb civil liberties, we'll do it. One nutcase comes along and he makes these mistakes. Look, the real honest God's truth is, I feel that if we had not done what we have done in the last 10 years, we would have been in deep shit. Our waste processing in 2014 was 14 to 15 to 16%. The figure I got was 16%. I don't believe it because the states have a propensity to enhance their waste. It means out of every 100 tons of waste that was being produced, 85 was going into what are called legacy dump sites. And only 15% was produced. Today we brought it up to 78%, 76, 78. And give me another 2 years and it'll be 100% waste processing. That's one difference. Secondly, I don't like to call them slum, I call them informal settlement. What happens? People move in pursuit of economic opportunity.
Correct.
Urban space produces what, 65 to 70% of the GDP. So somebody very poor in some state of Bihar, why is it that today you will come to a situation slowly, sometimes in Punjab, a Purvanchali will be able to win from a Punjab Lok Sabha seat?
Because of the migration into Punjab.
Exactly. And in a democracy, all that would take place. You can go and settle, you settle in Mumbai, you're highly successful. You can go and settle in Indore, Bhopal, very clean cities. You can go and settle anywhere you like. Ideally, if we had woken up to the benefits of urbanization in the pre-Modi era, we would have been prepared for it. We are prepared for it now. What we are doing is, under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, we are offering a bouquet of 4 verticals. One of them is ISSR, in situ slum rehabilitation. You come to central Bangalore, huge complex private-public partnership. You come to Katputli colony here, will be ready. GK, kya tha wo GK1 mein, the flats that we produced for just before the Delhi Kalkaji. What happens is, your ability to use the 1975 June formula that this is a slum, you can't live here, I'm going to reset it. No, it has to be done on as is, whereas people come to the cities looking for work. Today we are producing affordable housing in partnership. We are producing, what is it called, that rental housing in two models. And therefore, in the coming years, you will hopefully have a situation that if Mr. X from a place, whatever, wants to move to Delhi, there'll be a place you can go and live in. Otherwise, unscrupulous elements will come and cut out unauthorized colonies. Another thing we are struggling with. They will do that. But that is because along came Mr. Modi, who realized that urbanization also presents a great opportunity along with challenge. Therefore, he has used this urbanization, and I think urban transport is a case in point. We are going to very soon have this world's second largest metro system. Very soon.
There's a survey from this company, this real estate think tank called Track to Realty, which talks about RERA. It was supposed to be this landmark law that would transform real estate and make it very convenient for buyers, home buyers, to get their premises positioned on time, to hold builders accountable, and a variety of other things. Basically transform the sort of nightmare that people went through when the real estate was largely an unorganized market, which it still is in agricultural real estate, by the way. But the home buyer satisfaction index is quite low. But the home buyers satisfaction index is quite low even after 7 years of RERA. In this survey, only 48% of buyers say that projects are being delivered on time.
First of all, let me do some context setting for you.
Please.
It is shocking that 70 years after independence, we didn't have a regulator in real estate. Shocking because real estate is the largest contributor to, we were discussing RERA, I wanted you to be here. We were shocking, I said, that 70 years after independence, we didn't have a regulator in the most economically vibrant section of our economy. Real estate is number 1 or 2 or whatever it is. When we decided to introduce RERA, the opposition which came from to RERA being introduced, you must understand, came from people who outwardly would tell you that what a pity we don't have a regulator. But you were taking away something that they were enjoying themselves with. Not having a regulator meant they could do whatever they wanted. India was perhaps one of the few countries in the world where a builder would collect money for a project, and the home buyer was sufficiently uneducated or chose not to be educated. He would not read the fine print and give the money to the builder. And the builder thought he was very smart. He would go and invest in land banks, which was very good business because land values go up. But after a while, if everybody is investing in land banks and something funny is happening, then the bloody thing just dropped. And suddenly there was chaos there. So when we decided to bring RERA in, everybody said, very good, very good, very good. But then people started realizing, ये तो दुकान बंद हो जाएगी vested interest की. तो उन्होंने क्या किया? उन्होंने एक आंदोलन शुरू किया. No, RERA, this is too little, too late. We must need a much stronger RERA. मतलब इस आने ना दो. So then they mounted a campaign to oppose the law. And hundreds and thousands of applications came. Many cases were filed in different high courts of the country. And then the Supreme Court took the very wise decision, put all those complaints into the Mumbai High Court. And I happened to become minister at that point of time. Somebody came and said that, if this consideration by the Mumbai High Court fails, we're going to have chaos. I said, I have enough faith in the judiciary to tell you it will not fail. I didn't know who it was, but they upheld it. And then we started applying RERA. But the story is still not over. Then the issue became, what happens to the pipeline projects? What is the coverage? Is it only on new cases? What about the old cases? Well, I tell you, the good news is we've got all that done. Periodically, attempts are made to dilute RERA. And I said, till I'm the minister, it's not going to be diluted. I made it absolutely clear. But now you come to what is happening on inventories. The problem essentially is in 2 or 3 areas, and I think they are in the national capital region of Delhi. What's happening in UP, what's happening in Haryana. We appointed what is called the Amitabh Kant Committee to look at some of the problem. Today, the situation overall on real estate is inventories have come down. Values have gone up. Because values are going up, unfinished projects will also be sold. Now, I am not, through this podcast, going to take a pot shot at who's at fault. I'm not going to do that. But it's open knowledge that for every one good builder, there may be many not so good builder.
Yeah.
People have taken home buyers for a ride. And by the way, the home buyers also have allowed themselves to be used. Sometimes when a thing is absolutely getting ready to be solved, somebody will go and file an appeal in, what is it called? NCLT or somewhere else. Then it becomes sub judice. But today, by and large, the cleaning up process through very steep drop in inventories. I used to tell the builders, why don't you get rid of your inventory? They're also commercially minded, so they know once land prices go up, now the flats have both recovered their value. So the Supreme Court stepped in. One particular case is very bad, I'm not going to name it, where a Supreme Court directed committee has not been able to solve the problem. But today, overall, the picture is much better. So whatever home buyers satisfaction rate, I'd like to know the date and this thing, because I can give you counter data. Today, I can tell you that is one of my less serious headaches.
Got it. But I've spoken to a few builders and they said that every state has a different RERA authority, right?
No,
and so
every state has a different RERA, but they have the same laws. No.
But it's harder to implement it, and that's why some state governments just implement it in a very weird way in which...
No, that's that. Don't talk to the builders, talk to the RERA authorities also. What happens in some cases, you got a very good RERA authority, like RERA, for instance. Maharashtra RERA. What was that guy's name who was head of Maharashtra RERA? Gautam Chatterjee. I mean, everybody loved him. He got dispute number. By the way, we'll give you the number of RERA, how many agents have been registered, how many cases have been solved. All those we'll give you. That will show you how it's moving. Some states, very unfortunately, appointed a head of a RERA authority who didn't understand his or her role. So they thought they were into something else. Then there was also, when 2 or 3 new laws come into being at the same time, you also need what is called judicial harmony between them. I think RERA was at the same time as the Insolvency Act, etc. Some of those, but they're all more or less sorted out now.
Okay. We obviously know what's happening in the Middle East right now. I'm going to wrap it up in 10 minutes if you have a paucity of time right now. And India still imports oil from the Middle East largely, right? And do we have a plan in place to make sure that we do less imports?
First of all, we import from 39 sources now.
Okay. But all in the Middle East or across the world?
World over. We import from geographically diverse areas such as Guyana, Venezuela, Russia. We didn't import any from Russia till February 22, 0.2%. United States, $20 billion. Middle East. So I think the manner in which India has played its energy card, I mean, the imports of crude oil. We consume, 5 million barrels a day out of a global consumption of production and consumption of about 100 million barrels. But we have not only been able to solve our own problem, but we've also, I think, played a fairly significant role in stabilizing global markets. Because if India had not bought from Russia, you would have had this situation of us buying from the Middle East and prices would have gone up from 100 to 130. So discounted purchases from Russia or Iraq or anybody else helped to stabilize and calm the markets. And that now is acknowledged by the Americans, not by us. They've made statements at different levels. First, Jeff Pyatt came along. I think he's Assistant Secretary for Energy. Then I heard Eric Garcetti make that statement. We will import from wherever. Our primary aim is to ensure the trilemma of availability, affordability, and sustainability. Availability, we proved. There's been no shortage anywhere in the last 3 years. Affordability, we are the only country in the world where prices actually have come down. In the countries around India, they went up by 70-80%. Sri Lanka, Pakistan being a case in point. In the US, Canada, UK, Germany, they went up by 30-40%. Our Prime Minister decided on 2 occasions, November 2021 and May 2022, to reduce the central government excise. And prices of petrol and diesel came down by 13 and 16, or 16 and 13.
So why is it in common parlance that whenever you see a citizen interview or some layman talking about petrol prices, that seems to be a way to sort of criticize the government?
Well, I respectfully submit to you that this is again, I don't know, during this election it didn't come up at all, I can tell you. And even otherwise not true. I want to give you this chart and I would suggest you use it. Petrol and diesel prices between September 21 and March 24 went up in Pakistan by 61%, Bangladesh 27%, Sri Lanka 72%, Nepal 33%, USA 30%, Italy, Spain, Germany 17, 13, France 22. India, it came down by minus 6.9%.
Okay.
So what will happen is when I am asked this question, first of all, it was not an issue in the election, it's not an issue. When I'm saying thank you very much for giving me this full toss, I'm going to step out of the crease and hit it out of the ground for this thing. This is a hard reality. And then I've also given you the BJP ruled states. The BJP ruled states brought down their VAT. And the non-BJP, and who are the ones who talk about it? Priyanka Gandhi Vadra. Rahul Gandhi he's got trolled nice and proper. He won't speak. Cylinder का दाम हमारे ज़माने इतना था. I got up and said, ये इसके ज़माने में तो cylinder था ही नहीं यार. Cylinder था ही नहीं. 140 करोड़ अगर हमारे जो लोग हैं उसमें परिवार कितने हैं? 32 करोड़ 40 करोड़ जितने भी हैं, 14 करोड़ कनेक्शन तो था कहाँ पहले? And क्या करते थे? And this is now, you must use this information. They were giving massive subsidies in order to produce artificially low prices. They floated oil bonds of 1,41,000 crores. And I'm having to pay back 3,50,000 crores. This is Punjabi में कहते हैं ना, कर्जा ले नाना और भुगते पोता. This is what these guys do. So that's why they've shut up on this.
So you're still paying that
Of
even
course
now?
we're paying it. Of course we're paying it. Of course we're paying it. So this is a scandal. And that's why I want you to use this. That's why I am being upfront in telling people that this is what these guys do.
God damn.
It's total false narrative. Total false narrative. इन्होंने क्या किया? इन्होंने पहले टोटल नंबर ऑफ पीपल जिनको इन्होंने गैस सिलेंडर दिया था बहुत छोटा था और वो भी सब्सिडी नहीं दे रहे थे सबको और जो सब्सिडाइज किया ओवरऑल गैस सिलेंडर को नीचे रखने गए एंड अमाउंट ऑफ सब्सिडी इज ह्यूज हमारे यहाँ क्या वी आर रिमूविंग द सब्सिडी एंड मेकिंग इट चीप फॉर एवरीवन अभी हम दे रहे हैं उज्ज्वला में वी आर गिविंग आई थिंक द उज्ज्वला सिलेंडर्स 500 rupees a cylinder. So our subsidy is what, 300 rupees or something like that. But it's only for Ujjwala. Other gas cylinders come down. What we have actually done is we have also increased the domestic production of natural gas by 18% every year for the last 3 years. So these guys don't have a case on this.
I have asked you all the questions I could possibly about policy. Now I want to move something lighter and then I will let you go because you were looking at your watch and I don't want to take more of your time. This is mostly because I've been to your house twice now. This is the second time. I do notice that you've got a very tasteful style. Lots of antiques, lots of figurines.
No, I wouldn't call them antiques, but yeah, taste for good things. It comes essentially from my wife and ably supported by me.
There's a massive audience base that always seems to ask me about how do you acquire taste and class, especially if you're not born into opulence or if you have hardworking.
If you walk, I want to contradict that. If you're born into opulence, then you have no taste. No. What is taste? Taste is an appreciation for the good things of life, and it has no value unless you acquired them yourself. If you are inheriting a museum or something, you won't have anything. Just come here, just take it for granted. Here, every little thing I can tell you when I acquired it, what happened. It's like every fountain pen or watch I have. I once had a discussion with a very close friend of mine at one point of time, late now, never. So I used to tell him कि we used to every time he looked at my pen, ये बड़ा अच्छा पेन है. Then he used to tell his son, यार खोलना, सरदार जी को दिखाओ मेरे पेन का. मैंने कहा तेरे पेन तो तेरे client ने आके दिए. Each of my pens either I bought or my daughter has bought or a very close friend has given me. So these are not comparable. You don't have you don't get class by wealth. Some of our most accomplished people, they are able to take great pride. This sofa that you're sitting on was given to me by my wife on my birthday when I was in New York.
You carried it from New York?
Yeah. That table I designed when I thought I was going to be a private citizen and I was going to start a portal as a startup. I designed that table.
So
myself.
how did you use AutoCAD or did you use hand drawings?
No. I'll tell you what, my designing is very different. I'm not into graphic art or anything like that. I have a guy who makes furniture. Okay, so I called him. And I told him this is what I want. So what he would come and say, I said, Duke, I don't want because nobody has time now to make handcrafted. Nobody has time. So what you do is you make it as a mix between furniture which is made in a factory and then you put in elements of handcrafting.
The embellishment is handcrafted, for example.
Precisely. Yeah. Now that comes from a desire to have change. If you look at I have ours is a home very blessed with writing tables. There are a lot of writing tables around. A lot of them. I have one which I acquired for the first time in Colombo. Colombo is a great place for antique furniture, old, burger furniture, etc. So I had one made there. Then I bought one when I was in Europe, etc. Now you have a taste in these things. That's why you will acquire it. Now you don't develop a taste just because you had. So I think the.
But do you stumble into taste? Do you find inferences and references of people around you who have the same kind of taste, and then develop it?
No, you tend to. It's a question of, do you believe in studying interiors or not? That's the issue. If you are interested in studying interiors, then it's a journey which begins. Then you go into period, then you go into styles, then you go into that. But it's not just you are rich, because we have been middle class most of our lives. Now we are very comfortably off in the sense as compared to most people, because I have a wife who has substantial earnings from the UN pension, etc. Plus, you have a government pension, you are a member of parliament, you have a pension, and you have some other earnings, etc., which you had before you came into. Now, if you want to acquire something, you will look into why you want to acquire it. And you can be discerning in your choices. That is why I think what is important.
But where does the discerning come from? Does it come from study? Does it come from looking at other beautiful things across your life? And then
no, that's something, it's both nature and nurture. I don't think you can say it came from X or Y. I know in my case, my parents were very house proud, but limited civil servant salaries, etc. When we grew up, etc., and my father was also in the Ministry of External Affairs, and we lived abroad. You admire things, etc., and you go along. And I've now been working non-stop for what, 50 plus years. So if you look at that, it takes you all over the world, and you pick up little things here and there. But that's, at the end of the day, it's very personal. Somebody once told me, there's a friend of mine who's very much into Western things. He said, yeah, but you have everything mixed in here. You have Indian, this thing, you have Western, you have Oriental. I said, wherever I've lived. I mean, that screen I picked up in one of my trips into the Far East. The fact that I was able to carry it, because it's, stone inlay work. It's a big thing. I mean, I ordered another screen, which should be around somewhere here. When we ordered it from when we were abroad, we used to order a lot of stuff out of Peter Justison. The Peter Justison used to be a catalog.
Okay.
I don't know whether it's still around. It was a warehouse. You could order anything anywhere in the world, and diplomats have duty-free this thing. So that screen, I don't think survived. But I'm very happy that some of this stuff has survived and it hasn't got chipped, etc.
And this one looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's one of my trips into the Far East.
Fantastic. Okay, what is one common advice that older people give to younger people that is complete BS?
Younger people don't need advice. Giving advice is in and of itself BS. Look, let me tell you, I was also 16 and 18 at one stage.
Sure.
And I used to be so impressed with people wanting to sit you down, bete aise karna, usse waise karna. And I used to look at them and say, Sale, tumne pada nahi kya kiya aur humko advice de rahe ho. Your best advice you can give to a youngster is, if you've led a life which has certain elements in it which deserve to be followed by others, you don't need to give the advice. They will see through it. So I mentor a lot of very young people, most of my team are very young people. But the only thing I tell them is, yeah, you do what you think is right, provided we are working within coordinates. And the Modi government especially. A good minister is only as good as his PS. Let me tell you, if the PS is on the rampage, the minister's had it. Minister won't even find out what's happening. But after you've been around for a while, my only advice to young people is, don't be in too much of a hurry. Don't be in too much of a hurry. Don't be lethargic like the previous generation. We didn't act fast enough on a certain thing.
But I think we're acting way too fast for our own good. I think we're acting way too fast for our own good.
But that's your point of view. I still admire the fact that you are moving very fast, forward very fast. I admire that. But you have to determine the pace at which you can. See, I keep coming back. I think if I have to ever write a book on the philosophy of life, it is continuity and change. You have to maintain continuity and you have to bring in change. But you can't bring in the change so fast that you lose your links with the present and the past snap. Because the previous guys learned things. I mean, Lakshmi is very fond of saying this. She says that, the younger generation now have inherited a free India. But a lot of people had to struggle for that free India. And the previous generations, those of us who are now in our early 70s, we've known what it was, to make do with so little. Today, my God, what was a civil servant salary when I joined? 400 rupees a month. 400 rupees a month was a civil servant. If you added all the allowances, etc., it would come to 600, 700 rupees. Today, any bright kid coming out of a university, and one especially who's had the benefit of an education which has resulted in his or her thought buds and processes opening up. You demand your price, yeah. You demand your price. I'm not talking about just IIT and this thing. Well, look at the startups. I mean, the other day I hosted an event and there were, I was shocked, 350 people there. Listen to their stories. Yeah. From Zomato to Technical Guruji to kya naam hai uska yaar, wo Vachani and all those guys. One is I wouldn't say in great admiration. And if somebody is saying I'm in awe of them, I would believe that. But look, we produced our excellence also in our time. Make no mistake, we produced some outstanding people. But today your total number of unicorns that you produce now and you compare to my generation, hai nahi hai yaar.
पहुंचते नहीं थे 1000 करोड़ तक 1000 करोड़ तक पहुंचते ही नहीं थे
कोई नहीं पहुंचता था साले कंट्रीज नहीं पहुंचती थी वो इंडिविजुअल्स कहां पहुंचेंगे.
Okay, so 2 small questions, then I will let you go. What is your advice to IFS and IAS aspirants? Your wife and you are probably the first IFS officers retired that I've had to meet in my life. I haven't met a single person from the Indian Foreign Service.
But it's a great service. Even the IAS is a great service. I would say to people aspiring to join the Foreign Service or IAS now, completely change your mindset. The civil service has, what is it called? A steel frame. What is it called? Steel frame. That is an old British concept. That's very regulatory. It's very district magistrate, law enforcement. Today, a civil servant has to be much more. Because God has been so kind to the civil service. You're chosen. From the day you get appointed, you're certified, both in terms of character and education, etc. There's so much more you can do. I mean, I'll tell you a small thing. You give me a good district magistrate in a state, in a constituency I've adopted, for instance, Sonabada. You give me a good guy, he transforms the place, yeah. You give me a not so good guy, you will find projects going from one review meeting to another review meeting. See, suddenly changes coming up. What we've been able to do, I mean, I'm very happy with my team. Look at our biofuel blending, for instance. Very simple things. From 1.4% of fuel being blended, we brought it to 12% plus. We're taking it to 15% and 20%. The target was 2030. We brought it to 2025. We saved 41,000 crores when we reached 10% blending. With that, we could give our farmers 42. So civil servant, no matter what post he or she is doing, whether foreign service, revenue service, I'm not saying, they can do so much. But if your attitude is ki, how do you teach somebody a lesson? How do you bring people onto the, that, what is it called? Ji Hazuri Mai Baap culture.
Uh-huh.
Then it's, then you're utilizing that. You might as well, the extension of the police daroga syndrome.
At some point in your life, you were also a lecturer of history.
One of the happiest years of my life.
Really?
Because I love a lecturer's life, yeah.
Easy, just lecture people about history.
No, you don't lecture. You prepare a lecture, but you're talking to intelligent people, yeah. A history class of St. Stephen's College. I mean, I don't take responsibility for some. So some of my guys became very famous, yeah. My student, Shashi Tharoor.
But they were your students?
Yeah, my student. Well, they were in my class. I don't like to call them my students because I don't want to be blamed for what they turned out to be, yeah. But they were students when I was in the teaching faculty, yeah. Tharoor is a case in point, particularly.
He was your pupil in college?
No, you're not my pupil. He was a student when I was a lecturer, that's all.
Okay. But you taught him history?
I didn't teach him history. He was born taught, fully taught.
The reason
I once edited a book on Delhi University. It's a mass. I must give you a copy. I must inscribe it for you. It's a fascinating book. Not all, many more, many of the people who made it in life, Amitabh Bachchan, the Chief Justice of India, I'll just give you an example. They've contributed chapters in it. I wanted to be nice to Shashi, so I said, you write a thing. He wrote, but on one condition, you will never change a word, because he was doing his own self-glorification. So he thought as an editor, I would use the pen to say, well, this is BS, this is BS. So I said, no, I promise you on. I said, let the reader judge. Let the reader judge. No, he wants always to be in the limelight that, he is the best. So I told him once, you don't need to say it. If you're good, people will acknowledge you.
The reason I actually brought this up is because after having spoken to several friends who are far more intelligent and wiser than I, who are in the realm of politics or political commentary, they seem to say something that is true across all of the conversations I've had with them. They seem to say you lack a fundamental understanding of history. You only read media narratives and you only make up your mind using the last tweet that you read. And I found that to be categorically true for myself, and then I reflected on it.
No, don't be harsh on yourself.
No,
that is largely the case with everyone today. So unless you are grained in hardcore studies on your past, much of the stuff you get will be what he's saying about the past. Not correct. It's not correct. So don't be harsh on yourself. Those guys are saying they're making a general point. A lot of stuff which is given out to us on economics is basically that. He's got a point of view. A lot of guys who are in the business of shorting will send you narratives on India. Stock market gir gayi, stock market ye ho jayega, wo ho jayega. They are in the business of making money, yaar. Don't take them seriously.
So then, which brings me to what I really wanted to ask you. As a professor of history at that point, as a lecturer of history at that point, what would be like your top 3 or 4 book recommendations? I know there's several, and I know this is one of those canned questions that would at least help a young person in my audience. Most of the people in my audience, 80% is about 18 to 34. That would at least give them a more than rudimentary understanding of Indian history and global history, so that when they find themselves...
No, you'll have to be... History is such a large...
What are your favorites then, perhaps?
No, there's no question of it, because history is... we're a 7,000-year-old civilization. So depending on what it is that you want to understand, I'll give you 2 examples. If you're a student of ancient Indian history, I'm not saying good or bad, to get an understanding of ancient Indian history, I would say A.L. Basham, The Wonder That Was India. Pretty good idea. If you want an understanding of, let's say, what happened in colonial history, right? Were the British good, bad, very good, not so good, etc.? I'd recommend one debate which took place in a magazine brought out by the Delhi School of Economics, called The Economic History of India, I think something. There's a discussion between Tapan Ray Chowdhury, Bipin Chandra, and the third, I think, is Maurice T. Morris. I don't remember. It's been many years since you asked me this question. I'm not... It takes up very basic... The Maurice T. Morris thesis is that, the British did a lot of good for India. If I remember the name correctly, probably correct. I'll look it up. Bipin Chandra is very left-wing. Tapan Ray Chowdhury is more encompassable. It gives a very balance. You get a reasonably good idea whether it was good or bad. But see, history is such a long period that you don't have one book which is the history of the world or the history of India. I would say if you want to study medieval Indian history, and I personally am one of those who don't give too much of a... I should choose my words. I don't care too much who's written the history. Because historiography also will tell you... See, the Mughal emperors would employ chroniclers to record what is happening. More than recording what is actually happening, they were going to record the point of view of the emperor. So that is what the emperor wanted the Janta to know. The period kiya, uska mein yehi. Also, chronicler is a person who puts out a narrative. So the narrative setting is an old thing. It's an old thing. It's not happening today. It's happening because You guys are damn smart. Your television brings it out. Your podcast, your iPhone. Immediately you get to know as to what is happening and who's setting what. But you don't have to be a student of history to be discerning. You don't have to be. Some of the best pieces of historical writing are written by non-history people. One of my closest friends in the intellectual world is a guy called Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Now,
You're friends with Nassim Nicholas Taleb?
with every book I have, he has a endorsement. I'll just get me Perilous.
That's so crazy. You know Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He's so celebrated in the...
Yeah, so he and I always have this discussion. At every book that I've written, he's written his most outstanding work. And so I told him, at least stop being subject. Perilous Intervention or Delhi University ki kitab lana. So he teaches at NYU.
I know that. He's a professor of risk engineering.
Yeah, risk. So he said that he finds formal education. Now, don't quote me on this one because I don't want to put words in.
I've read several of his
He said formal education is a bloody waste of time.
Yeah.
He said if you really want to learn, you go and sit in a cafeteria in Paris or something, cafe, and the ferment of ideas that you get there will be worth much more. He said it's much better to be amongst bright minds. So, he started life as a number cruncher.
Yeah.
So if you've read Anti-Fragile, if you've read...
Bed of Procrustes, Black Swan.
Black Swan is my... Black Swan and Anti-Fragile are the ones. So, being with intelligent and educated people is an education. That's the point I'm making. And a lot of even in the liberal West, what's happening on American campuses is horrible just now because they've allowed their sense of judgment to get the better of them. But formal education is merely those coordinates which put you in a position of, where you are in terms. I think it's far more important to attend those classes and open your mind, and then you see the creative and productive part of you
rise up,
yeah. and rise up literally as getting elevated.
Yeah, some of my most transformative times in life till this date have been my classes in comparative religion, in advertising, in literature, even in psychology.
See?
Because
if you're in advertising and then you comparative religion, look at the link there. It would appear so remote and yet it's so direct.
Yeah, no, because in India, you usually, when you talk about religions, you talk about it in a very diatribe-centric manner. You never talk about religions, as in you never engage with primary scriptures, but in those classes I had the opportunity to do that, which is what made me, I guess, in a way, understand advertising better, because, you can link different fields and make connections. But do you have other cool friends like that who have...
I have a lot of very cool friends. Very cool friends. They get very impressed with... No, I've been around for a long time. I've had the privilege of... I wouldn't say they're friends. They're people I've known over a period and whom I've greatly benefited. Some of them make it a point to, when they come to India, I host breakfast meetings with them. I meet them when I'm outside. A lot of people, I find the ones who have been subjected to cross-cultural, and who have found themselves in situations, they soak in so much that the articulation of their views becomes, it's a pleasure to listen to some of these guys. Sometimes you're not, at that point of time, you don't understand what exactly. Then suddenly you reflect on it and say, my God, that was really a perceptive statement that he made. And my sense is that the entire architecture of the world post-1945, the organization of the world, that is undergoing a massive see the comment on top.
An outstanding book on the side effects of interventionism, Nassim Nicholas
No, when you read the whole thing there, So he's very complimentary because he's a friend. I tell him, no, I'm not gonna, I mean it every way. So I tell you that we stand to look at an entirely new world. What happened in 1945? Because whilst the Second World War was going on, some of the guys who were in a dominant position in the world decided to reshape the world. So out of that was born the UN, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. It's all falling apart. So you are now preparing, you are at the Russia, Ukraine is only the latest of a thing. The main thing that has happened is that the Security Council is paralyzed. Why is the Security Council paralyzed? Because that is the one designated agency in the world authorized to make a determination on whether there is a threat to international peace and security. Having made that determination, they could authorize countermeasures or all means necessary, which is a euphemism for the use of force. Now, when that book is on Libya and Syria, perilous intervention, and the Security Council fell apart. But if the Security Council has 5 permanent members and each one has a veto, so today nobody bothers to go to the Security Council. He wants to wage war on this guy on that guy. They say, go, just wage the war. It couldn't happen earlier. You needed Security Council up to Libya and Syria. In Libya, they got Security Council authorization.
Despite that, Muammar was assassinated?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is the point. In Syria, they needed Security Council authorization. Chinese and the Russians wouldn't agree. There they agreed. I told them, and the real stories comes out if you read it. I told them, you guys are making a very serious mistake. No, but the Arab Spring was intoxicating. They thought Arab Street was Arab Street may have been desiring democracy, but then the Arab state system came down and the backlash was so severe, you put them several decades back. That's what happened in the Middle East. So now the democracy has to come. Democracy is not something you can impose from outside. India is democracy in the real term. You had republics in Vaishali or wherever, 6th century BC. So you have a democratic spirit. But I think your generation is lucky because you're going to see India will be Viksit Bharat much before 2047. The only point on which I disagree with the Honorable Prime Minister, I don't disagree. I think he's too conservative on this. It won't take till 2047. Different parts of India are developing, other parts will develop. Much before 2047, you'll have a very large size of the economy, and because you have a large size of the economy, the rest will fall into place.
I really hope that happens, and I'm very, very thankful to you for your time. And I had a blast, especially in the last...
I enjoyed talking to you. So, I'm normally... I don't know, I have an instinct of certain things I want to do. So when Abhijit sent this to me, he's not, I said, how? And when we all discussed it, let's do it. I mean, today was not a particularly good day because I've had a string of meetings since the morning. But I said, no, set aside time, and we did it. I'm glad.
Thank you so much. No, sincerely.
So I don't think there's anything that I said that you guys are... I heard you shaking your head once or twice, but mine was uski aadat hai.
Gets a little worried. Tracking censorship?
No, it's not that. No censorship. No, he's shit scared on reservations. I always say affirmative action at the best of times is required in a society like India because you've had longs. The problem that happens is then other things start off. So I think he was worried about that, but I didn't say anything on that.
We're going to edit it, release it as it is very, very soon. And sincerely, of course, now that you have been in the government for so long, I assumed you would only talk about the government, but thank you so much for letting me speak to you about other facets of your life.
I spoke to you about everything else other than government also.
That's true. That's what I was saying.
Anyway, I enjoyed talking about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. This was Dostcast with Hardeep S. Puri, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye. Subscribe. Sayonara. Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Done.